55-year-old Jerry Parsons lay motionless on the floor, feeling nothing but pain and hearing nothing but his wife screaming. Jerry, who has multiple sclerosis, had tumbled to the floor after his frail wife's legs buckled beneath him while she was transferring him from bed to chair. Luckily, Jerry's injuries were not serious, but a plethora of injuries similar to Jerry's trauma have been reported across the nation, signaling a collapse in a sector of healthcare: personal home care. Personal home care consists of personal care attendants assisting the elderly and disabled with a variety of personal care needs. The home healthcare industry has exploded in recent years with little attention to regulation and needs of the industry. The U.S. Department on December 8, 2014 notes that the industry should grow by 49% by 2022, making it the second fastest growing occupation in the United States. Not surprisingly, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid note in their 2013 report that 3.5 million Americans use home care services. However, Fortune magazine of September 15, 2014 calls the industry the fastest growing and worst paying in the United States, leaving patients with subpar health care, if they receive any at all. The home health care industry is in dire need of regulation and repair. So today we will examine the causes, effects, and solutions to a problem which Dr. Charlene Harrington, a nursing professor of the University of California, argues: leaving anyone at home receiving care is in serious danger. With millions of people using home care services, it is impossible to ignore the fact that defenseless clients are being abandoned because of two main causes: unqualified employees and isolation. First, unqualified employees. The Wall Street Journal of August 22, 2014 notes that currently ResCare, one of the largest home health care companies in the United States, has a 40% turnover rate, meaning they hire 2,000 new employees each month just to replace the staff who quit. To put this into perspective, it is almost as high as the 50% turnover rate typical of the fast food industry, as stated in the Small Business Chronicle last accessed March of 2015. This is compounded by the fact that most of these employees are minimally trained. For example, in Minnesota, the only requirement to become a personal care attendant is to pass a simple 25-question multiple-choice quiz, and then you are considered responsible for the care of vulnerable adults. This would not be a problem if these employees have been formally trained to, say, a nurse. But this pay is so bad and the work is so strenuous that qualified employees simply cannot fill the jobs. Second, isolation. Dr. Robert Kane of the University of Minnesota states in the June 21, 2014 Minneapolis Star Tribune that the harms of the systemic collapse have gone largely unnoticed because they are happening in thousands of individual, isolated homes. Unlike in a nursing home, these patients are often alone and have no one to turn to for help. For example, Laverne Nelson, a man who has chronic pulmonary obstructive disease, which means he gets winded accomplishing the smallest tasks. One day, his personal care attendant did not show up for work. Days, then weeks, and finally months went by, with no one, nothing, and no help. As Nelson said, I was sitting there rotting. Like other former patients, Nelson felt too scared to call the police or other officials, fearing they would discover his frail state and force him to move into a nursing home. Sadly, there is no way to determine exactly how many patients out there are feeling isolated and too scared to speak. Home healthcare companies are leaving their patients to suffer alone. And incredibly, there is nothing legally wrong with this. Clearly, the home healthcare industry has become a breeding ground for mistreatment of patients. The lack of consistent, competent care has two main effects: neglect and financial abuse. First, neglectful caregivers cause and worsen preventable medical illnesses. For example, Yolanda Farrell, 85, who was living in a nursing home until her daughter decided to take over her care with the help of personal care attendants. In the 2 years they lived together, Yolanda saw the doctor once and stopped receiving care for her bed sores shortly after moving in. Unfortunately, Yolanda ended up dying due to preventable septic shock because of an absence of treatment for her bed sores. This is just one example of where neglect caused an unnecessary deaths. stated in the Atlantic of January 6, 2015. These patients are often feeble and afraid to speak up, states Detective Vaughn in the previously cited article. Yolanda didn't have a voice. She was deprived of that. The fall of the home healthcare industry negatively impacts patients in every way, often taking away their security, identity, and sometimes even their lives. In addition to neglect, these patients also suffer from financial abuse. According to the FBI website, last accessed in January of 2015, home healthcare fraud has risen to $10 billion annually. An example of this fraud is stated in the Huffington Post of August 2014, which details a scam on Medicare that lasted for 15 years. During this time, home healthcare companies charged Medicare for a multitude of electric wheelchairs for patients. Once they received the money, they pocketed it, and no electric wheelchair was ever given to a patient. None of these patients ever needed any of these electric wheelchairs charged to Medicare either. In addition to the cost of the fraud, the cost of tracking down the fraud creates a $500 billion price tag. And while this price tag is horrific for all of us to bear, this also affects patients on the individual level. The Washington Post of August 15, 2014 notes that patients are often charged for services that were never actually rendered. These patients often feel they have no voice to report it, no way to stop it, and feel they can do absolutely nothing about it. The home healthcare industry has grievously let Jerry, Yolanda, and many others down. We need to take action now to transform the home healthcare industry before it is too late, with our two main solutions: employees' rights and government regulations. First, we need to train and pay our employees better. If we want our family members taken care of at home, we need to take care of the people taking care of them. The Nation of August 26, 2014 notes how workers in Illinois and California have begun to unionize to gain better wages and better working conditions, and they have succeeded. Now, other states are following suit, as stated in the Miami Herald, August 29, 2014. Alone, workers' voices are small, but backed by a union, they have transformative power. Of course, none of this matters unless the industry has oversight by the government. We need to follow Medicare's example, who notes in their 2014 report that in 2013, they returned $210 billion in fraudulent charges. We need to support their effort in prosecuting criminals and returning the money they stole. Visit stopmedicarefraud.gov to show your support and find out how to spread the word, because unless we prosecute every criminal, widespread fraud will continue. Lastly, we need to discuss how home healthcare companies treat their patients. According to the June 11, 2014 Minneapolis Star-Tribune, Senator Al Franken has been a leader in this. He has introduced legislation that would require states to create a Bill of Rights for their home healthcare patients and a strategic plan to enforce these. We need to contact our local congressional representatives and let them know we support this piece of legislation, and they should vote for its passage. Unless we show our elderly that we respect them and want them to feel safe, they never will. Today, we discuss the causes, effects, and solutions to the collapse of the home healthcare industry. As we can see, it is in dire need of regulation and repair. We need to take action now to fix what is wrong before it happened to Jerry Parsons, Laverne Nelson, and Yolanda Farrow ever happens again.